Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents 2 Awesome Hours, Science-Based Strategies to Harness Your Best Time and Get Your Most Important Work Done, by Josh Davis, Ph.D. Narrated by Steve Menasche. Introduction. Be awesomely effective. Whether we love or hate our jobs, the amount of work most of us have to do each day has reached unsustainable levels. We start a typical workday anxious about how we will get it all done, who we might let down, and which important tasks we will sacrifice, again so we can keep our heads above water. As we grab our first cups of coffee, we check our email inboxes, our handheld devices, scanning to see who has added a new task to our to-do list. The stress builds as we read email after email, each containing a request that we know can't be dealt with quickly. We mark these emails as unread and save them for later. We mentally add them to the piles of work left undone the night before, when we left our offices much too late. More emails to answer, more phone calls to return, more paperwork to fill out, and everything needs our immediate attention. In fact, too many things need our attention before we can even get to the tasks that really matter, and too many things matter. We frequently work all day long, at the office and then at home, taking care of our families, cleaning up, paying bills, sometimes only stopping to sleep. There simply isn't enough time, but so much always needs to be done. If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. In my work as a professor, teacher, executive coach, author, and trainer, I have found these experiences are all too common among professionals and non-professionals at every level. More problematic, I see people from all walks of life, from executives to doctors to students to entrepreneurs to government workers, gravitate towards some ill-fated solutions to find relief from this work overload. And these solutions are making the problem worse. Over and over, I watch smart, dedicated, hard-working people fall for the trap of efficiency. We try to stay on task as much as possible, capturing any downtime throughout the day and putting it to use. If we have staff working under us, we try to get those people to do the same for as many hours as they can pack into each day. Time management, books, gurus, and even whole consulting companies have taken up the challenge of helping us to do more in less time. As my brother, a Fortune 1000 executive, says, we all have a lot of to do. It's good, but at the end of the day, cramming 10 pounds of into a 5-pound bag, we're still covered in Other time management experts advise us to get to what matters most first, because there may not be enough time for those tasks later. Yes, it's valuable to separate the truly important from the urgent, though less important, but there's something frustrating about this advice. When all's said and done, there are still a lot of things we have to do that are not the most important on the list. Some things matter because they affect our relationships, some because not doing them will, in the long run, get us fired, some because we agreed to a deadline and we can't flake just because something else important is on that list. Even if these tasks are not what matter most, we may still go home feeling anxious when we don't complete them. Sure, some problems go away if we ignore them. We can get better at letting things go. But with many of our tasks, we will not be absolved of responsibility for them. Eventually, they need to get done. If a lack of efficiency were truly the problem, most of us, including my accomplished clients, would have solved our problems by now. Choosing the right system or app to help us manage our time or prioritize our tasks would relieve the pressure of the daily grind. But quantity and capacity are not the only factors that matter, and despite working as efficiently as possible, we are still not satisfied. Many of us feel stifled rather than accomplished at the end of a typical day. However, what we want is attainable. Most successful people I meet want two things. The first is that they want to stop feeling out of control. The second is that they want to kick butt at work. They want to be masters of their craft. In both cases, the typical and misguided response, which tends to fail, has been to expect ourselves to work constantly and pack more into our already packed days. What's wrong with this approach to getting work done, and how can we improve it? A story of productivity. There's probably no one more famous for his industriousness than Benjamin Franklin. People the world over agree he was a model of effectiveness and productivity. He was frustratingly capable. His list of accomplishments is absurd. Author, inventor, scientist, printer, philosopher, politician, postmaster, diplomat, and more. How can any human being do this much in a lifetime? A quick look at his rise as a printer and publisher, his primary profession, sheds some light on the way he worked and, in the process, reveals a lot about what we are doing right and what we are not. By 1724, at the age of 18, Ben Franklin had already apprenticed in a printing house in Boston, worked independently in a printing house in Philadelphia, and published a handful of widely read articles. That year he left for England, where he would learn the printing trade from the best, such as Samuel Palmer, a well-established printer. Not bad for a poor kid with 16 siblings. While working at Palmer's, Franklin quickly annoyed and impressed those around him with his work ethic and cleverness. His co-workers drank beer from morning to night. He drank water so he could have the physical stamina to outperform them and save a little money. You might say it was easier to have a competitive advantage in those days, but Franklin gets credit for seeing the opportunity, taking the risk, and following through. Ultimately, he was promoted, and he moved to an even better firm. When he returned to Philadelphia a couple of years later, he was willing to do what it took to establish himself. After working for another printer for a few years, he took on debt to set up his own business. With a print shop at his disposal and in need of cash, he identified another opportunity: publishing his own material. There was only one newspaper in town, which Franklin considered a paltry thing, wretchedly managed, no way entertaining. He knew he was the only printer in the area who also had the ability to write well, so he tried his hand at publishing newspapers, and eventually Poor Richard's Almanac. Almanacs have space to fill, apart from their noteworthy dates. Franklin filled the empty spaces with his now famous proverbs, making his almanac more entertaining and much easier to sell. Poor Richard's Almanac was a hit. In order to secure the success of his printing business, he also took on the position of clerk of the General Assembly, which allowed him to meet plenty of people who had a say in where government printing, things like ballots and money, was done, and he eventually landed the job of postmaster in Philadelphia, which helped him circulate his newspaper. These positions offered small pay and meant extra work, but they also allowed his printing business to take off, helping him become a man of some status in town. Benjamin Franklin was and still remains a beautiful example of productivity and achievement. Work hard, take on more, and success will follow. Today, everyone thinks they have to be like Franklin to achieve some success. They have to do more than what seems possible. But the truth is, not even Franklin was like Franklin. As it turns out, beyond taking care of his finances, he was anything but focused on work. We seldom talk about this other Franklin, hardly the live-for-your-job icon we sometimes think of. But I didn't have to look hard to find out more about him. It's in his autobiography. He loved to think and create. He spent huge amounts of time on hobbies and with friends when he could have been working at his money-making career as a printer. In fact, the very interests that took him away from his primary profession led to so many of the wonderful things he's known for, like inventing the Franklin stove and the lightning rod. To understand the secret to his success, I believe it's crucial to look how he spent his downtime and just how much of it he had. One of his main hobbies as a young man was hanging out every Friday with a group of guys who were seriously into books and talking about ideas. The group would agree on a topic to discuss at the next meeting, and each would read what he could on the subject so he could come back prepared to argue. Books, however, were hard to come by in Philadelphia back then. Many needed to be ordered from England. Franklin's group realized it would be nice to keep all their books in one place so they could check one another's references easily, a concept that led eventually to the great and historic public library now called the Library Company of Philadelphia. Franklin did not found the library when he was around age 25 to make money for his printing business, nor was it part of a government position he held. He simply put time into founding this library because he enjoyed talking about ideas, especially ideas that would lead to improving himself and the world around him. He loved literature and art. He even wrote some music for his wife. And famously, he was an incurable flirt, spending a great deal of time wrapped in that pursuit after his wife's death. He was also the original American self-help junkie. He tried vegetarianism briefly because he'd read about it in a book, and loved all the money he saved. Plus, he poured tons of time and energy into developing a plan to practice his now famous 13 virtues. Of those 13 virtues, one jumps out as seemingly relevant for anyone trying to pack in as much work in a day as possible. The virtue of order, meaning being organized. Franklin claimed he never really got good at that one, writing in his autobiography, "In truth, I found myself incorrigible with respect to order, and now I am grown old and my memory bad, I feel very sensibly the want of it." He earned a reputation for enjoying the many pleasures of life, from learning to socializing to flirting to creating. It seemed dazzling that he could do so much work professionally and still enjoy so much hobby, leisure, and social time. So how did he do it? Every day he created the mental and biological conditions for peak effectiveness, and in those periods of effectiveness, he accomplished extraordinary things. He did not cram tasks related to his printing business into every available hour. In fact, in a plan he drew up for how to spend his days, he included time for a 2-hour break for lunch and other things, time in the evening for music or diversion or conversation, and a full night's sleep. It was probably because he made time for pleasure, learning, creativity, entertainment, physical health, family, and social connection that he was so successful in his money-making work, rather than in spite of it. Devoting all of his time to his printing business rather than his other interests would have been the most efficient use of his time. But imagine how little we would know of him if he had done so, had he never reserved the mental space and energy for his many inventions, for his philanthropy, and perhaps even for his printing empire. Which Benjamin Franklin do you want to be? The one who carved out time for his hobbies and social pastimes, jumping from interest to interest, or the man who outperformed his competitors to become a productive, well-regarded, and wealthy businessman. These days, it seems there isn't enough time for both, so we must choose to either enjoy life or succeed. The good news is that this is a false choice. We feel pressured to choose when we mistakenly assume that productivity depends on finding enough hours in the day. The efficiency trap. While helping high-level executives and professionals become more effective, I've learned that regardless of how high up the ladder we are, we typically respond to being overwhelmed by work in two ways. One is to force ourselves to stay on task without breaks in order to make the most efficient use of our days. The other is to work more hours and to ask anyone who works for us to do so too, to make the most efficient use of our weeks. Underlying both of these solutions is the belief that to manage our workload, we should stop wasting time. We should be efficient. This belief follows from a fundamental misunderstanding of how our brains work. Staying on task without a break and working longer hours are wonderful solutions for a computer or a machine. Computers and machines don't get tired, so the quality of work is identical every time they are used. Using them more frequently will only lead to greater productivity and efficiency. But of course, we're not computers or machines. We are biological creatures. Continually demanding one kind of work and a consistent level of effectiveness from our brains is like continually demanding the same speed from a runner under any circumstances, whether sprinting or competing in a marathon, or whether running with no sleep after fasting for a day, jogging after recovering from a hangover, or exercising after being fed and rested. There are consequences of being biological creatures on how we think. A number of people in the scientific community call these consequences embodied cognition. Embodied cognition includes the many ways that having a body influences thought. The brain serves as a part of the control mechanism for the rest of the body. Cognition, any kind of thinking, cannot be properly understood without referring to the body it serves. What does this mean? It means that how you move your body may greatly affect your thoughts. Sitting with your hands behind your head and your feet up on a table, a pretty common power pose, can make you feel more powerful. Your physical movements may affect your moods too, and can color your interpretations of other people's thoughts or intentions. Research suggests that if, for example, you make a hostile gesture, like flipping the bird, while evaluating someone, you are more likely to see the other person as hostile, because the movement primes the idea of hostility. Or consider how you learn. You rely on memories, but you don't install memories in your brain the way you install a software program or download a file into a computer. Rather, memories are something you grow. It takes time for neurons to structurally change so that they can more easily reactivate one another in the future, which may help explain why cramming the night before a test is not as effective as learning the material over multiple days if you want to retain it long term. These are a few of the thousands of findings illustrating the ways in which, by virtue of being biological creatures, we are quite unlike computers or machines, and therefore cannot achieve the level of efficiency they do. However, each of us has vast, untapped potential as a human that computers and machines do not have. And trying to be efficient all the time will block us from harnessing it. If my aim were to do 10,000 push-ups, I'd have a really tough time doing them without a break. But I would have no problem if I did a small number at a time between other exercises and spread them out over multiple workout sessions. The brain is very much like a muscle in this respect. Set up the wrong conditions through constant work, and we can accomplish little. Set up the right conditions, and there is probably little we can't do. What I've learned from working with highly productive and happy people, and from my study of neuroscience and psychology, is that to be truly productive, our best bet may be just to ditch efficiency and create instead the conditions for 2 awesome hours of effectiveness each day. 2 awesome hours. The key to achieving fantastic levels of effectiveness is to work with our biology. We may all be capable of impressive feats of comprehension, motivation, emotional control, problem-solving, creativity, and decision-making when our biological systems are functioning optimally. But we can be terrible at those very same things when our biological systems are suboptimal. The amount of exercise and sleep we get and the food we eat can greatly influence these mental functions in the short term, even within hours. The mental functions we engage in just prior to tackling a task can also have a powerful effect on whether we accomplish that task. Research findings from the fields of psychology and neuroscience are revealing a great deal about when and how we can set up periods of highly effective mental functioning. In this book, I'll share in detail 5 deceptively simple strategies that I have found are the most successful in helping busy people create the conditions for at least 2 hours of incredible productivity each day. 1. Recognize your decision points. Once you start a task, you run largely on autopilot, which makes it hard to change course. Maximize the power of those moments in between tasks. That's when you can choose what to take on next and can therefore decide to tackle what matters most. 2. Manage your mental energy. Tasks that need a lot of self-control or focused attention can be depleting, and tasks that make you highly emotional can throw you off your game. Schedule tasks based on their processing demand and recovery time. 3. Stop fighting distractions. Learn to direct your attention. Your attention systems are designed to wander and refresh, not to focus indefinitely. Trying to fight that is like trying to fight the ocean tides. Understanding how your brain works will help you get back on track quickly and effectively when you get distracted. 4. Leverage your mind-body connection. Move your body and eat in ways that set you up for success in the short term. You can eat and physically do whatever you want on your downtime. And 5. Make your workspace work for you. Learn what environmental factors help you be on top of your game, and how to adjust your environment accordingly. Once you know what distracts you, or what primes your brain to be in creating or risk-taking modes, you can adjust your environment for productivity. These strategies, derived from neuroscience and psychology, may sound simple, some may even seem like common sense, but we rarely employ them. Understanding the science behind them helps us know what's worth acting on and how to do so within the constraints we have. We can all learn to deploy them regularly and consciously with powerful results. There's nothing magical about 2 hours. I'm recommending 2 hours because I've found that length of time to be most attainable and sufficient for getting to enough of what matters each day. The specific number of hours is not critical. As you gain experience with these strategies, you can set up conditions for 4 hours or even just 10 minutes of peak mental functioning, depending on what suits your needs that day. Note that I'm not suggesting you identify 2 specific and consistent hours every day, say from 9 to 11 a.m. when you will aim to be effective. If you are like most busy professionals, you don't always have control over when things need to get done. If you are a morning person and your boss asks you to give a presentation at the next staff meeting in the middle of the afternoon, you better be in top mental shape when you deliver it. These strategies can help you set up the conditions for peak mental effectiveness at any time in your workday. While I believe that you can accomplish great things under the right conditions, I'm not suggesting you will be able to get all your work done in just 2 awesome hours. I do think, however, that when you are mentally effective, you can accomplish whatever matters most to you at that moment with pride in your work and inspiration to do more. The rest of the day you can devote to those tasks that don't require much strategic or creative thinking. Slog through emails, fill out forms, collect reimbursements, manage schedules, pay bills, plan travel, return phone calls. You can more successfully decide what to let go of among those tasks, too, when you're thinking more effectively. Working in tandem with our biology, setting up the conditions for a couple of hours of peak productivity, allows us not only to focus on the tasks that are most important to us and our success, but also to restore some sanity and balance to our lives. Mastering your productivity. Everyone is capable of learning to be as effective as they want to be. And in the rest of this book, I'll show you how. I'll describe how the 5 strategies work, explain the science behind them, and share stories that show them in action. For each strategy, I'll also suggest a few steps you can take to put that strategy into practice and make it easy to use. It is my hope that every time you listen to this book, you'll discover new insights, increase your self-compassion, and continue to master the game of being mentally effective. At some level, we all know from experience that we can be remarkably effective in short amounts of time when we treat ourselves right, and horribly ineffective when we don't. Once you understand the science behind what makes us truly productive, I hope you'll trust and build on what you already know about yourself and start thinking about your day in terms of how and when to set yourself up for 2 awesome hours. Strategy 1. Recognize your decision points. As part of his responsibilities as a scenario planning consultant, Doug writes a monthly analysis report of the latest developments in the clean tech sector. It's a task he loves. It allows him to be creative and to dig deeply into a topic that fascinates him. While working on a report one day, he finds himself in a trance, not really aware of anything besides the computer screen in front of him and the noise of his typing. The spell, however, is broken when his eyes happen to drift to the clock on his desk. It is late in the morning. A twinge of slight nausea surfaces as he reluctantly recognizes that he ought to stop writing, even though he wants to keep going, and instead answer an email he received days earlier from a colleague who needs his input to prepare their department's budget. With trepidation, Doug opens his email box, determined to answer his colleague. But a dozen new requests confront him. An email from a project coordinator catches his eye. She needs to know his availability for the next few months to schedule a meeting. He tackles that request first, since it seems fairly straightforward and easy, but just as he is about to start answering the email about the budget, the one he really needs to answer, and that is fairly complicated, his calendar alarm buzzes to remind him that a one-on-one meeting with his company's CEO is in 15 minutes. He still needs to prepare a little for it. The smart thing to do would be to close his email, get his thoughts together for the meeting, and start walking to the CEO's office. But the desire to feel a sense of accomplishment is too enticing. He
Sample complete. Ready to continue?